Artem is an incredible young man. We interviewed him when we found out he was selected a few months back. And in doing the interview, I said to him at the very end that I don't see a little boy when I see him, and more so I see a strong man who's come forth due to the things he's had to face. He came to us from Ukraine in pursuit of peace and safety to join an aunt that lives here. We nominated him because we noticed that it said what makes a leader, and when he shared his story with us, we discovered there were 3 basic things in his story. The first is that Artem demonstrates that a leader has to be courageous. He says, I said, Artem, what would you say that helped you to get out of there? He says, the people who took a chance and left, you had to have a mind that you could make it and just try. But if you remained, that brought more uncertainty than to try to leave, to know that there's somewhere they could find safety. So he showed us that takes a strong heart to leave something that you've known all your life, even though it's only been 7 years he's been here. But for him, it is life as he knows it, to face a new life. He demonstrates leadership on a daily basis and having to learn the English language, an entirely different culture. There are some aspects I noticed that he connected to right away. Other things, for example, when I first started gathering him from his class and we form a line, I noticed that he'd have a different stride than the other children. And then it dawned on me that he's marching, because that's all he'd seen for several months, were the soldiers lining the streets. So he's here physically, and a large part of him is still in Ukraine, and he has to sometimes snap back to be able to really grasp the English language and the concepts, the way we do things, even down to math. While he loves it and is strong in it, they tackle it a little bit differently than we have to. So he has to be flexible and to relax his mind to accept another form. I would say that's the largest thing. I asked him, does he ever doubt that he will be able to speak fluently? He says, no, not at all. You know, another thing that stood out for me with him is having to take risks. He stated that the day I asked him how did he know that the war indeed was had reached his village. He said his father happened to have been working in a nearby village and called them to tell the family that it was time to evacuate that building, or at least to get to a point of safety. And they need to bring anything of value, so that led me to believe they must have lived on one of the upper floors. So he said, including the dog, and they just went down to the basement. He says that's his first time hearing the bombings and feeling the sensation of that. And then it became very clear that they were going to have to not stay in that building. So he says they started maybe over that day, the course of that day or the next few, peeking out and trying to go out. But as soon as they would even barely take a few steps away, they noticed the Russian soldiers, and they realized that it would be better to travel by night. So he says by night, they actually started to escape into the woods. It took about 3 tries, because every time they seemed to go out, he says, like they were perhaps drones or something, they could see them and the grenades would come down. But again, he said, so they'd go back to the building, and the building each time was in worse condition. But again, he said, it was clear to them that was going to fall and be utterly destroyed, but somewhere there could be safety if they just took the risk to try. And so they finally made it to an aunt's house, to my understanding, and then rather quickly they were transported to Poland, which seems to have been a point to give direct contact to the United States. That taking that risk saved his life, and coming here and then coming to school.